The McClendon Report.
Santita's dad, of course, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and of course his close friend, Dr. Martin Luther King, said that a riot is the language of the unheard. And I wrote an editorial for the Northwest Indiana Times this Sunday, and it was really interesting because one of the things I mentioned in there was that we live in the United States of shame, a country riddled with the schizophrenia of loyalty masquerading as good policing and American citizens who care more for dogs and phony $20 bills than human beings. And so that's where we are right now. So this thing keeps coming up, we have to embrace diversity and inclusion. But the reality is that shouldn't be something that we have to embrace. It should be a part of of the American fabric. You shouldn't have to make somebody be moral or be good. And that's what's so sad about this. Hundreds of nations know now that this country claims to be real and true and honest and free, but verily I say unto you, America is a sham.
Yeah, well, Mayor Lightfoot promises two things. One, President Trump will not be bringing in military action into Chicago. She says, I will see you in court over that. The other thing is police reform. And we've talked about this for a long time. She said within 90 days. Let's start with you, Val, because we want to get you in this conversation.
You know what? I talk a lot on this show, okay?
We love it.
It is always a joy and a pleasure for me to sit back and listen to the voices of Santita Jackson and Garrard McClendon, and to hear you speak. I feel like I'm in church right now. Mm-hmm. And you know how in church, you just shaking your head. And at one point, I just wanted to say, you better preach, Garrard, because you said that thing. And that thing needs to be said. And yesterday on the show, Erica Watson came on here and said, sorry, we can't package it up into a pretty little box anymore, put that bow on it and worry about hurting feelings and tiptoeing and sanitizing the situation and watering it down. This has got to be said. So I say enough. Thank you, Ryan, for getting me in. But can I just tell you, I'm enjoying having a front row seat to Windy City Live today.
Okay, there you go. Well, Santita, let's jump over to you. Police reform within 90 days is what the mayor is promising. She has laid out steps. It wasn't just lip service. She does have steps. Better training, bringing in the community, bringing in leaders and getting advice from them, getting feedback from organizations like My Block, My Hood, My City, who we've had on the show many times. Love them. Mandating
a new recruiting program.
Yes.
A recruiting program on how we recruit these officers and what neighborhoods they go in. I love what you just said, Ryan, when you're bringing up the points. Look, I just said I wasn't going to talk, sorry. But having the community be a part of these classes that are being taught to the officers. That I liked.
Yep. What do you think, Santita? Do you think this is possible, and why has it taken so long?
Well, I think it's very ambitious, and Chicago's the place to start. I mean, this is where we killed Fred Hampton, and the police did that. This is where we had a mayor who said, shoot to kill. The police were going to do that. I mean, and we had people who knew that the police officer who killed George Floyd knew him. They worked in the same club. Mm-hmm. And the way he stood on his neck with his knee so casually. My brother and Reverend Jackson went to Minneapolis last week. Let me just back this up just for a hot second, because I think it's important for us to get the facts out there. He wasn't killed over a counterfeit $20 bill. He had already spent $100. He broke a $100 bill. He received $20, a $20 bill that was counterfeit back from a business transaction. So it's important for us to remember that. Okay. I think, having police officers who know you, like having teachers who know you, like having doctors who know you, we learned this from Sesame Street, right? When people know you, they treat you differently. They don't want to arrest you. They pull you aside and say, young lady, young man. They go to your parents and they say, you know what? If I can help somebody who's traveling wrong, if I can steer somebody, wait a minute, then my living's not been in vain. They behave very differently with people they know. And so I think that this is a very ambitious plan. I support what the mayor is doing. I think it's going to take more than 90 days, and she knows that. But what she's really trying to do is get these wheels a turning. because we need this. And Chicago has such a history. I mean, I could just go chapter and verse. I mean, from the Red Squad, who were even sent to kill Reverend. I mean, this is what we do. And that's why we have to be very, very careful. And I think we should support the mayor's efforts to reform the police, because if we don't reform them, the reason they're taking a knee right now, they have no credibility.
Yeah.
When they don't have credibility, they don't have a job.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. If you don't ban chokeholds, if you don't reinstitute anti-lynching laws, if you don't reinstitute and make sure that the Voters' Rights Act isn't concrete, we still don't win. See, people's nice neighborhoods have been trashed. Now everybody cares. When the hood was always trashed and nobody cares. See, young people know now that fairness does not exist. That's why all the looting is taking place. That's why all the graffiti is taking place. And everyone wants to take their eyes off of George Floyd and look at material things. We have to look at it like this. Love people, use things. But in the society we live in now, people love things and use people. See, young people don't trust adults. Murder is just another story now. 90 shot over the weekend, 27 murdered over the weekend, and now it's time to bring in police reform? That's ridiculous. I commend the mayor's efforts, but unless you do something systemically, nothing will change. And here's the thing, this skin right here, dark skin, when I have my mask on, I'm no longer a PhD, right? I'm just another thug in the street. And until you change a man's heart, nothing will change.
Yeah, no, but you get that without the mask. Yeah, and quite frankly, you know, if you don't mind, if I could say this, look, George Floyd is the spark. What's in the embers? More than 40 million Americans on paper have lost their jobs over the past 6 or 7 weeks. The Economic Policy Institute of Washington, D.C., 3 weeks ago said it was 50 million. You have a pandemic and 40 million people at least who no longer have health insurance. And the reason we know they don't have health insurance is because your health insurance is keyed into your employment. You have gentrification, which is pushing people out of their neighborhoods. I'm watching people pushed out of the South Side where I live right now. He's the spark, but people, if you would go through and not just talk about the marches, but talk to them, you would hear a lot of different stories. Homelessness, all of the things that Dr. King was talking about 50 years ago, so much of Bernie Sanders' platform in 2020 and so much of Reverend Jackson's platform. I mean, not just them. I mean, you have people who've been really pushing in a progressive direction. Now we're here. Now Andrew Yang is not a joke. Now we have to come up with universal basic income. Now we got to come up with, you find out that if I have COVID-19 and I don't have insurance, guess what, Ryan? Guess what, Val? Guess what, Gerard? You got a problem, because it doesn't matter. If you're sick, then I'm sick too. Right. So we're going to have to be linked to each other. We have to grow up in our politics and just grow up as human beings.
Yes. If we're both in a pool of gasoline, it doesn't matter who lights the match. Right. We have to realize that we're all in this thing together. What did Martin Luther King say? We may have all, could come here on different boats, but we're all in the same boat now.
Right. I watched Jimmy Kimmel last night. I don't know if you watch Kimmel at night. He had a really powerful statement last night. He said, a lot of white people get upset when they hear the word white privilege. He goes, I have to admit, I used to get upset over that term. He goes, and then someone put it to me like this. Just because you're white doesn't mean that your life isn't hard. It just means that your life isn't harder because of the color of your skin.
Right.
And Val knows my background very, very well. My mother struggled with drugs and alcohol her entire life. I had a tough childhood, was on the government system at times, had a hard life, but I have never had to worry about police brutality. I've never had to worry about the judgment. Right now with COVID, I wear the mask and glasses when I go. It's the only time I've ever had a cop, take a second look. And that's something that I don't get judged on. So if people can think about it that way, It doesn't make your life harder because of the color of your skin. People get so sensitive, and I have friends of all races, and I hear so many different sides, and I really try to get them to understand. First off, the riots are not. We know that there's a million different agendas going on, right? We have criminals out there. We have people making homemade bombs, not black people. The man that was from near Peoria was just arrested and charged with inciting a riot in Minneapolis and lighting the police station on fire, and arrested in Chicago. 28-year-old, he looks white. So there's a lot of different, it's like we always want to judge and lump people together. And that's what's my biggest message has been to my friends. Wake up.
Well, 80% of the social distancing arrests in New York City were of black people. We're going to have to look. There's so much that we do under the cover of darkness. So many class issues that we ignore, that we're allowed to ignore. I mean, the fact is, the Boston Tea Party and the American Revolution, when Crispus Attucks was killed, the first person killed in the American Revolution was a black man. The second person who was killed was not. It was a rainbow fight, because these men and women were at home, kind of, but the men and women, they were black, they were Native American, they were black and Native American, they were white, and they were all poor, working for the crown, and they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to grow up in our politics. And you know what? The oligarchs didn't like seeing them all come together. So what they did was they racialized slavery. They kept the white people indentured servants. And here we are. We're still fighting the fight. And now white people have black problems. And that's why you see white people in the streets. So now what we can do, I think, is we can look around and say, you know what? We're all in the same jam. We all have an economy that's not working. For most of us, it's not. Ryan, you could have, but for the grace of God, you could have just drifted off into the sea, because there are white people who do that. Look at Chris McGreal wrote a book, American Overdose. He looks at the opioid crisis. They dropped 30 million pills on a township of 30,000 people, white people. Who does that?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Gerard, come on. Why would you do that? Because you want to numb people out so that they don't respond to the problems of the day.
Taxation without representation. We saw it happen in Ferguson, 21,000 people, highest tickets ever written to more black people per capita in this country. I'm glad you mentioned the Boston Tea Party throwing 342 chests of British Isles Indian tea into the harbor to basically say, no, we are going to uprise and take this thing over. This is about Americans getting the opportunity to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when you deny those three things, there will be an uprising. There will be. And we see it happening right now. On the business side, I'm really going to retool and rethink going to businesses that I used to go to before, though. Even after businesses and restaurants open, I'm probably not going to frequent any restaurants for quite some time. But I'm rethinking my patronage towards businesses, because I'm not going to return to businesses until, one, I feel safe, and two, they give me spectacular 5-star service. I cannot stand when I go into a store or into a restaurant and I get this second-rate service. So for all of those businesses that reopen, Garrard McClendon is probably not going to be there if he's not getting the tip top, because this is a time to take care of people. South Korea took care of the citizens, and the world didn't follow suit and protocol. And so now the United States has to live with the fallout of COVID-19 running roughshod and running rampant over this country, as well as the killing of George Floyd. It's going to be a rude awakening when these businesses do reopen, because it's a new day.
If they can.
I think what we need to do is look at Germany. Germany gave its citizens 80 to 90% of their salaries just to be the bridge until they could get themselves back together. David Mazziotra, who's a brilliant writer with Salon, asked this profound question a couple of weeks ago. Are we a society or are we an economy? And I think we've got to answer that question. Societies are comprised of people. Economies are about business. They're about the money. The COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately taken out Black people, but not just Black people, poor people, because poor people have poor baseline health. If you had some health problems, you more than likely were not going to survive this. So these people are saying, not that we need to put people back to work, we need to put them back in the mills. They want to open up the economy. No one's talking about looking at the meat workers and wondering, how are you doing? What about the janitor? What about Katina McDavis at Northwestern University Hospital, 43-year-old woman working hard every day on the housekeeping staff, who is a diabetic, is struggling. She couldn't get a mask, Ryan and Val. She couldn't get a mask. She couldn't get answers from the doctors and from the nurses. They were struggling too. We're going to have to make some decisions about who we are and understand whose we are, because we're all God's children. So and you know what? They did not start off trying to loot their neighborhoods. And when you take people's livelihoods from them, we're looking at 40 million people haven't had a paycheck in six to 8 weeks. But guess what? Some other people never recovered from 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get real about this. You know, we've got to look at the fact that Americans have been struggling for a very long time. And how are you going to deny people food, basics? How are you going to drive a Rolls Royce up to a place and unload? I don't understand what this is about, because the only time Dr. King led a march that devolved into violence, it was the violence was started by a Morehouse man who had ties to the CIA. So whenever I see this looting and this violence, whenever I see on YouTube these young protesters, these demonstrators asking, why was a pallet of bricks left in my neighborhood? Mm-hmm. Like we ask in Chicago, why were all of these guns left in my neighborhood? Mm-hmm. Let's ask these real questions and make a decision about whether we're going to be an economy or a society. Now, I want us to be a society. I want to evolve into a civilization. That's what I'm going to fight for.
Yeah. Power concedes nothing without a demand, and it is time for us to reinstitute the social contract. Thank you very much, Santita Jackson, for that.
Yeah, I want to mention a couple positive moments here. Jerry Williams, one of only a handful of female African-American police chiefs in Phoenix. She said the level of voice we are seeing right now from the entire world is unlike anything she's ever heard. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about what's going on in the U.S. I don't know if you saw that clip. He paused for 21 seconds and gave a heartfelt response. Please look that up. And also, Gianna Floyd on the shoulders of Stephen Jackson. It was so moving. She said, "Daddy changed the world." And we are seeing these incredible moments, and it gives you hope, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. It does. And seeing that little girl was just, but and he does also have a 22-year-old daughter. And I think that was the human side, right, Gerard? I mean, it took me back, Val, to my father coming home to watch me go to prom. Right. I mean, that's as if it were yesterday. It makes me go, wow, my daddy walked me out the door.
Yeah. We want to hear that story, but we got to take a break. Santita, we love you. Gerard, we love you.
The McClendon Report